Good morning. This is Honors Chem, Chapter 1, Section 3. This is a nice, short, easy chapter. So we are reviewing elements. Remember, elements are something that is composed of atoms, only one type of atom, can't be broken down into anything else. And all the elements in the entire universe, the 118 of them that we know of, are found on the periodic table. There's three types of elements. We have metals, nonmetals, and metalloids or semimetals. So let's go through the three types. Metals are found on the left side of the zigzag line. We'll go over that in a second. They are shiny. They're ductile. That means that they can be drawn into a wire. They're malleable, which means you can flatten them into a sheet, and they conduct electricity. Nonmetals are found on the right side of the periodic table. They're dull, so they have all the opposite properties. They're dull, they're brittle, so if you tried to flatten them to a sheet, they would just crumble. They do not conduct electricity, which makes them good insulators. So let's talk quickly about some examples of metals and nonmetals that we know of. Metals like aluminum would be a really good example. We know aluminum can make up cans, it can make foil, and it conducts electricity really well, so we can use it to cook on. We use aluminum pans to cook things sometimes. So that is a metal. Nonmetals, I like to think of carbon in its charcoal form. So if you think of a piece of black charcoal, that has a lot of properties of the nonmetals. It's not shiny at all. It's brittle, so if you tried to flatten a piece of charcoal, it would just crumble into little bits, and it's not going to be a good conductor of electricity. Metalloids or semimetals, they're right on the line which divides the metals from the nonmetals, so they tend to have both properties. Some are shiny, some are not, and they also are good semiconductors. So a semiconductor is one that conducts only at certain conditions. So silicon, for example, conducts at high temperatures, but not at low temperatures. And because of this, we can use it for electronics, computers, cell phones, and other electronics, because at a high temperature, it will allow electricity to pass through. It'll be a conductor. At a low temperature, it will not. So it's like a switch. It will turn on and off whether or not it conducts. Okay. And so here's our periodic table. If we look at the periodic table, we'll see in a second that everything over here, all of these on the left and in the center, these are all metals. And only the small group on the right are the nonmetals, and the ones that are right on the line, those are our semimetals. Okay, last two things you need to know for this section is we call these columns that make up the periodic table, these two, and then we tend to skip the center section in Honors Chem because it's a little complicated. And then these groups over here, especially this one we know pretty well. These are the noble gases. These are called groups or families because all of the elements in the column have similar properties. So they tend to look alike and act alike. And then we have periods, which are the horizontal rows. So this would be period 1. It just has two elements, hydrogen and helium. And then this would be period 2. And the elements across a period, they're all very different. They all look different and they all act different. But you notice a pattern that happens over and over again with their properties. So it starts out very reactive. And then as you go to the right, it gets less reactive. And then it starts getting more reactive again. And then you hit the noble gases, which are non-reactive. Then that pattern repeats itself. That's why it's called periodic, because it repeats itself over and over again. Okay. So down here, we have our filled in periodic table. You guys are going to fill in where the metals, the nonmetals, and the semimetals are in the periodic table above. So there is a dark line usually that is not on this periodic table, but it divides the periodic table up in this kind of a step, like a staircase, and it divides right here the metals from the nonmetals. If it's touching that, with the exception of aluminum, because we said aluminum is definitely a metal, and the exception of these two at the bottom, this polonium and astatine, these are considered metals. So these ones right here, boron, silicon, germanium, arsenic, antimony, and tellurium. Those are the semi or metalloids, semi-metals or metalloids, and they have properties of both. All right, as a review, you guys are going to go into your textbook and you're going to do these 5 problems. They're on page 20 of your textbook, and you may do them digitally or you may write them on a piece of paper and take a picture